How are you, Jay?
I feel good.
Really? Tell me why. What's your secret?
I've just been doing stuff.
Like? No coffee? I know you're doing no caffeine.
Oh yeah, no coffee, no sugar.
I don't really drink that much caffeine either. It makes me jittery.
Yeah, I quit sugar, I quit coffee. The next thing I'm gonna quit is weed. I'm freeing myself.
Cold turkey.
I'm freeing myself. I'm cutting all strings.
I've heard from like shaman friends, of course you know Uni, he was talking about how every plant medicine has a spirit, and when I asked him to describe what's the spirit of marijuana then, or cannabis, and he goes, it's a very sticky spirit. Like she holds on to you, she wants more from you. Like, yeah. So yeah, the idea of you being free of that, like no judgment, like there's some great utility in cannabis for certain people, but if you're just kind of using it just to like have a better time, or if you're reliant upon that for relaxing, it's probably best to like wean yourself off of it.
I agree.
Yeah.
It does brighten my day in the sense of like it actually brightens the way I look at life.
Really?
Yeah.
But you don't want to rely upon that. You want to muster that from within.
I want to be okay with the dullness within me.
Find beauty in dullness. Find beauty in sadness.
I agree.
I don't think
I can find it in everything. So
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
With that, then it makes the joy richer. You know, I think it's good for us to sit in our emotions for a bit. Yeah, I think the people who avoid, like, oh, I don't want to be negative, I think those people are in denial.
I agree. I think negativity is important, just as an acknowledgement.
As an acknowledgement, I think it's good. It's healthy to acknowledge when things are not going well, or to acknowledge like feelings that maybe are not the most positive. I wouldn't say let it take over your life, but like
obviously,
let yourself acknowledge.
Dwelling on anything is not good.
Dwelling on anything is not good. That means extreme joy too. Like only wanting to dwell on the positive is also not very good, I feel.
We're on the same page. Oneness.
Okay, so getting off of cannabis, anything else? Your secret sauce of...
I'm not giving up my secret sauce.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be secret.
No, I don't know what the secret sauce is. No, that's it. Just sugar and coffee and weed seem to be the only things that, other than oxygen, I suppose. Maybe I'll quit oxygen next. And
just subsist on the mana of the universe. Just
there's some people that do that.
Yeah.
There's some people that do that.
How are they doing?
I'm not sure if they're getting a lot done.
They're probably just languishing away.
They're not doing a lot in the exterior, but I'm sure internally they're helping us immensely.
I hear a lot of different
I'm sure we can't do it without them.
I've heard like crazy fasts for like 10 days straight. Have you ever done that kind of thing? Do you find that kind of stuff useful?
Fasting?
Fasting for like 10 days.
I would find it very useful. I would like to do 40-day fast one day.
Whoa.
With maybe just sips of water.
Oh man, that seems extreme.
Like Jesus.
Did Jesus do that? Did Jesus fast for 40 days and just subsisted on water?
Yeah, that's right. He wandered through the desert. Remember, he was approached by the devil during his fast.
And the purpose of doing fast like that is what? To shock the body into cleansing itself? Is that what it is?
I would say, yeah. I would say it cleanses you. It makes you so pure that you actually begin to see things clearly.
I'm not sure I would see things clearer by starving myself for 40 days, personally. I can understand like eating less. I can even understand like doing fast where, you fast for a good portion of the day, and then for like a window of time you're allowed like a certain like a meal. That kind of fasting I can do. I don't know about not eating the entire time though. I think that's a little extreme.
Some people believe you don't need food at all.
And those people are not alive. I think those are extreme.
Have dwindled.
There may be a rare case of a person who can do that. Like I've even heard like amazing stories of, let's say, yogis in India who don't need to eat at all and they're totally fine.
Yeah.
But I think that's certain people.
Yeah.
I think for the vast majority of people,
we came here to eat.
Yeah.
Give me some food.
Exactly. I think part of
I feel
the 3D experience is to enjoy what's here and to be grateful for it and to contemplate, like to realize the miracle of life and the abundance that we have here. I think deprivation to an extreme, like a little deprivation is fine, but deprivation to an extreme, I'm not sure how that makes you any more spiritual. That's just my personal take on it. No offense to anyone who does that. If that works for you, that's great. For me, I'm just explaining why I don't do that.
I would say it's the same amount of spiritual.
Is it?
Whether you eat or not eat.
So you're just thinking it's a different mode of a different modality for different people. Whatever works for that person. Is that what you're saying?
Whatever you feel compelled to do, I feel is the right move. As long as you're not hurting
others or yourself.
I feel you can hurt yourself if you really want to.
Yes, you can. I think you can do that. I don't think you should.
Yeah, well.
I'm not sure we're so close on the oneness at the moment.
I mean, I really don't think anybody should hurt themselves. However, if they feel compelled to, just to see what it feels like, because a lot of people don't know what things feel like. Because they're numb. They're numb. They're empty inside.
So people who just have numbed themselves, who feel nothing, who feel just a void within their souls. Any feeling is good, even the negative stuff.
From my understanding, I'm just trying to understand them.
I see.
This is how I would see it.
I see. I don't see it, but I do see.
Yeah, if I were them, maybe I would. Because you always try to wonder, like, why would somebody do something like that? But people do.
What else is on your mind this week, aside from feeling good? Since we got on this little tangent, you when I asked you earlier what was on your mind, you mentioned something. Following up on something we brought out last week, which is sharing our experiences with plant medicine. Correct?
Yeah.
And I was like, which one do you want to talk about? And you're like, we'll see when we get there. So we're here. We're there now.
Oh, we made it.
We made it. We made it to this point in the conversation.
Time travel.
That's how it works, guys. You set a point in the future to do something, and then time will just carry you to that point. That is essentially time travel. We just don't think of it that way. Which one do you feel compelled to discuss today?
I'll share a quick one about
a quickie?
A quickie.
A plant medicine quickie?
Yeah. I'll share a quick story about, it's one of my favorite ones. Keeps coming up. It was the one with, where Jay did an activation with, what is it? LSD? Unicorn.
So tell the good people what unicorn is.
I thought it was LSD blessed by a shaman or something like that.
Is it?
It might have something else in it.
We may have to cut this part out. But let's just, and.
I didn't want to cut this part out. This is a good part. What is it?
No, I think it's, maybe we're not supposed to call it unicorn. I think you're supposed to just say, let's just call it LSD. I made the mistake of mentioning unicorn.
Okay.
Yeah.
It makes you feel like you're on a unicorn.
I think we're not supposed to mention unicorn.
Okay. All right.
Right.
I don't know. I've never been told this. I wasn't briefed. But
let's just keep it more general, I think.
Okay.
LSD. Just because I don't know if that's even out there. Let's just say LSD.
Okay.
Okay. So you feel compelled to talk about LSD.
No, I don't feel compelled to talk about LSD. Just about a quick story about my experience with LSD, which has only been a couple of times, but have been so valuable, I feel, and so impregnating in my life that it keeps popping up. You know, it's very traumatic. It was so traumatic that it keeps, repeating itself, which is, it seems to be...
Repeating yourself in terms of repeating the experience, like you feel compelled to take it again, or like you get flashbacks of those moments?
Yeah, I get flashbacks, like reminders, like, oh yeah, And LSD is a thing that seems to be a common theme where people get stuck in a loop with it. it kind of shows you the loop.
It shows you the mental loop.
Yeah.
That you get stuck in, which is why people oftentimes feel stagnant, or like, why can't I get out of this situation? It's because it's really a mental loop.
Yeah.
And I think what LSD does, and in my experience of it, I have taken it before, it shows you the prison that you create with your own mind. Mm-hmm. How you set limitations on yourself, and how your own bad habits keep you from breaking out of this terrible cycle.
Yeah.
So what was your experience specifically, or your quickie experience?
My quickie story is regarding the activation. It was the second time I did LSD, and your sister Jade was activating me, and she has a very unique style where she just she's very intuitive, and she feels out the room. Where I was in the room with Peter at first, and he was asking me some questions. We were just talking back and forth, and she's just walking around kind of listening, and just to kind of get a feel of where my head's at. And then she comes in and drops the wisdom. Yeah. So I just remember lying down, and she was like walking around me, and is very she has me walk in my imagination down this infinite hall of choices, a hallway of doors of infinite choices, and all the doors are all the things that I could possibly imagine that I could possibly want, including wealth and happiness and spiritual wisdom, love, anything that you can possibly want. And she gives me the opportunity of walking down the hallway and choosing the door that I want, and then when I open the door of the thing that I want, I see what it would take to get what I want. And I had never thought of it before, of like, in that sense of like, I always just thought manifesting just is like,
just envisioning it.
Yeah, something like that,
But not necessarily envisioning the number of things that need to happen in order to get there.
Right. And then even asking yourself, like these are the things that I would have to do or change in order to get to this point. Am I willing to do this? Yeah. Do I really want
Do I really
this?
Want to?
Yeah, is it
do I
really
want it
worth
this
the
much
effort?
To put this effort into it?
Yeah.
It's an investment.
It is. And then so it was very freeing, because there was like no attachment. I didn't have to want it. I didn't have to want any of it.
Because you define that. You decide that.
Exactly.
So there was a lot of, because the way you were operating before is like, I can do anything.
Sure.
In a way.
In a way.
But you weren't really honed in on like
what it would take.
What it would take, and what do you really want to do?
Right.
Yeah, it's great that you had that sense of like, I can do whatever, but now it's more focus, more discipline in the approach of what you wanted to do and where you wanted to
more practical.
More
and
practical.
I love practicality. I love practical steps because it's just very practical. It's like, oh, this is what I have to do. I just have to take this first step and get it.
Who doesn't like simplicity?
I know, right?
Because the world is complex enough, you might as well simplify how you think about it.
Yeah. So in this infinite hallway of choices, I was able to kind of make sense of what I would have to do, and you can see it. If you want to build a business, it takes early mornings and long nights and long days and a lot of failure and a lot of distress and a lot of anguish, right? It's like, okay,
I should know,
yeah. But it's very empowering. So it broke me out of the loop in a sense, because the previous time I did LSD, I just noticed all the loops. I was very aware of the loops, and the only way then that I can get myself out of the loop was to remind myself that I was in the loop, and then I would somehow magically appear back in the moment, and then I was out of the loop. But the medicine, the LSD, would bring you back into the loop, because that's what it wants to show you. It essentially, I feel like it wants to show me all the times, the infinite amounts of times that I've done this on purpose. which can be overwhelming, I feel. I do feel like I do remember having that overwhelming thought.
Everything's heightened though under LSD.
Yeah. But, I bring it back to my breath and I find my peace in it because it's actually more empowering than it is defeating, I feel, the loop. And the ability...
Once you understand it.
Yeah, and the ability that you can break out of that loop, create new loops. As a matter of fact, I feel very empowered creating new loops.
But that work in your favor.
Exactly, because they're just habits. Which kind of brings me back to the other point I wanted to make as far as like my my most recent understanding of AI, because I'm always asking myself, like, or other people that I talk to, it's like, why is it AI, like artificial? What makes it artificial? Why isn't it just I? Why isn't it intelligence? And so my most recent understanding revolves around the idea that I am the voice that you hear. I am the programmer of my computer, of my body. Since I'm the programmer, I am the intelligence. I am the programmer. This thing does what I tell it to do. And if I don't tell it to do anything, it's going to run with the old programming. And also, I feel like I want to find peace within the old programming and what I want it to do now. Because the old programming isn't necessarily negative, it's just old, it's out of date. And so I feel like we're just kind of like out of date iPhones, and now we're coming into a time where we're updating ourselves with our consciousness. And it kind of ties it together with the LSD thing, because I feel like the more that I practice and the more that I adapt these new habits that get me the things that I want out of life, the more I am like a robot. Have you ever seen like somebody that's really great at martial arts? And the way they move, it's just so...
It's just automatic and flows.
Yeah, right?
Like they don't even have to think about it.
Exactly. Like a robot, because he's already programmed himself.
Right.
And that his maneuvers are flawless, like a machine. And so I feel like the more I get in touch with humanity, the more I understand myself as a human being, the more I tend to behave like a machine.
Isn't that a paradox?
It is. It's very interesting.
But you're not saying like a machine as in rote. It's just, you're talking about in terms of the efficiency.
Yeah.
It's processing efficiency.
Processing
So I don't want to
efficiency.
say that you're like a robot in that you have no feelings and
No, I
that
do.
you have no sovereignty, or you can't distinguish, between what's right and what's wrong. But it's more about like how well your program is running, basically. How well founded it is. Or in computer speak, how well coded that you've made it.
Yeah.
And that it's impervious to, let's say, external factors, to viruses. It's a well-running machine. That's what you're talking about, like, in terms of being a robot. You're doing it you're using the positive connotations of being a robot, which is, basically running more effectively. That's all it is.
That's all it is.
Yeah. I have a different definition of artificial intelligence, if you're interested in hearing that.
Tell me, please.
So my family and I, we were watching the Marvel movie Doctor Strange recently, because there's a lot of actually interesting spiritual teachings, and maybe we'll get to that in another video, because there's actually a lot. Like, yes, it's a comic book based movie, but there's a lot of interesting lessons that you can glean from it if you know where to look. And in the very beginning, I don't know if you remember, have you seen that movie before?
Which one is that?
Doctor Strange.
I think
Yeah, so in the beginning, when he's in the surgery room, the operating room, and he's like playing music, and he's
the surgeon.
Yeah, he's the surgeon. He's like he's being quizzed on like what who the artist is and what year it came out, and he knows all this information while he's doing surgery. And it's basically to show off how much he knows, right? He has great capacity for remembering things.
And how he doesn't lose focus.
Yeah. But, as you get through the movie, he realizes like how little he actually knows once he like gets into the accident, loses the ability to control his hands, and he goes out and finds, camartage and learns about all the mysticism. Like what he knew before, I would consider artificial intelligence. Like, yes, you know a lot, but are you using that information for any good, or is it just feeding your ego and showing people how much you know? Like, not to get on the bad side of nerds out there, because I myself am a nerd of sorts, but there's a certain toxic side of nerd culture, right? Where you basically berate people for not getting a specific fact exactly right, right? And then,
or use the space bar instead of the tab button or something.
There's people who are focusing on very little things, missing big picture. There's plenty of great nerds out there who do great, wonderful, creative things, but the nerds out there that are just hammering at people for minutia, that doesn't help. That's artificial intelligence. Whereas the more important thing would be, why can't you just celebrate someone's joy in creating something? That's true wisdom, as opposed to intelligence. But like, I'll just, for the sake of simplicity, I'll lump the two together. Like, that's better intelligence than what you're trying to display, and like knowing these really specific, obscure references and putting in people's faces. To me, that is artificial intelligence.
Yeah,
That's
I like that.
An alternate definition of this.
No, it's the same. It's the same. I feel because like the computer, it does what it does. Like for me, it's like a data collection, and it collects the data, but I have to consciously program it on how to filter that data, so that I can function my life according to my regulations. And it's just like what you're saying, where it's through the data collection, it could just be minutia, but it's because that's what I consciously choose to share. It's like I want to consciously just point out the things that I know, instead of like listening and being in the moment. Right?
You get me.
I feel you.
So yeah. Was there anything else to add before I kind of took us off track? Was there anything else you wanted to add in terms of your LSD quickie?
The LSD, I think that was the main. That was already, I feel, almost 3 years ago, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. And it's still very, very touching to me. It's still something I think about from time to time, and still something I go back to analyze. Yeah,
I like it when it lasts that long, that you're still constantly learning from one lesson. Yeah.
And that's the thing about these, like something like LSD is like, I do not feel the need to do that.
They are not addictive substances.
Yeah, I don't want to do it.
Because it's not fun.
Yeah,
and it shouldn't be fun. I personally don't really agree with people who are just like, I'm going to be cautious about this, because I don't want to say like, oh, you can't just do these things for fun, because fun for different people can mean different things. Fun for the purpose of bonding and understanding and having like getting more meaning in a interaction, like I can understand that. But fun, what I don't agree with is people having fun. What they really mean is running away from something, trying to escape the toils of their life. That's when I don't agree. Like, you should not do any kind of plant medicines or drugs, however you want to call it. I choose the word plant medicines, or entheogens. Entheogens is another good word of describing these substances. That's usually leads to a bad trip. Yeah, if you're just trying to numb something or forget something that's very much bothering you, as opposed to trying to engage with your issue, that's usually not a good sign. Yeah. Just a good PSA out there. Yeah,
I do acknowledge the bad trips, because the bad trips are actually the good trips, because they're the ones that will really make you question.
It's essentially trying to teach you something. Why it's a bad trip? It's because it's trying to put in your face something that you're trying to ignore. Oh, you're ignoring it in your waking state? Well, let's see if you can ignore this one. You can't do anything. That's really what a bad trip is. A bad trip is, like Jay is saying, technically a good trip. It's really trying to give you a wake-up call, right?
Yeah.
But since you're not approaching it the right way in the first place, you probably will just see it as a bad trip and you won't see the utility in that.
Yep. And then you'll just be like, oh no.
Yeah.
That time I did LSD, I'll never do it again.
Yeah, because you're missing the
Yeah.
point. You're missing the whole point of it.
Yeah.
Like I would say that my first encounter with LSD, if I wasn't as mentally disciplined as I am, anyone else experiencing what I did would have categorized it as a bad trip.
Sure.
Right? Because in my experience with it, the first time I had tried that was, I want to say, a little over a year ago. I had done other entheogens, but that was my first, like, LSD. It took me a while to get to that point. And I would have considered it very difficult. I lost motion of my limbs, but also I could not see my body. It was really interesting for a good amount of time. I also felt like I couldn't recognize anything. Like I saw things. Let's say, for example, there's a painting behind you. I didn't know that was a painting. It was just a thing. Like labels started to get wiped from my memory. I recognized people. Like I knew how I felt towards certain people, but I couldn't exactly remember details about them. But I just knew, like, I feel safe with this person, or I like this person. A water bottle. I couldn't recognize what that was. And that could be very scary for somebody. And that's why you can imagine, like, feeling like you have amnesia or going crazy in a way. Like, I really did feel at some point like I'd lost my mind. Or when I finally was able to see my body, it was almost like in a state of decay. It looked like everything was melting.
When you would look down at yourself?
Yeah, when I was finally able to see my form. And then when I looked in the mirror, it just looked insane. It looked crazy, like rather frightening. And then for a split second, it feels very scary. And then I realize, I have to take a step back from myself and be like, what am I supposed to learn from this? The forgetting things or not remember what things are called, I realized in that moment that everything is programming. Like we learn that these things are called paintings. This thing is a table. This thing is a water bottle. But if we lived anywhere else, those could be called very different things and even have different purposes. It's just what we're trained, what we're taught that this thing is, and what service this thing gives to you. Those are all learning. So recognizing that everything is a program, everything is taught to you. That's when you get to see the matrix. That's when you start, and by the matrix I mean like you realize that your understanding of the world is oftentimes created for you, or if you accept something as such, that is your reality. Does that make sense? That was the first thing. Second thing was the whole body thing, like, and also not being able to control myself because I had a very strong physical reaction to it. And feeling this uneasiness, this anxiety. Like, what if I never go back to the normal? Which is a very normal thought that I think a lot of people have in LSD. Like, what if I'm stuck like this forever?
Yeah.
And it feels like forever.
That's a thought you could get stuck with.
Yes, and it can feel like forever, and that could be very fearful for a lot of people.
Also, with LSD, it lasts a long time.
It's very long.
It feels like it's never going to end.
It feels very long in a second, and because it's also long, it does feel endless. And I actually had to just be at peace with it. The more you are afraid, because it amplifies whatever you're feeling, the more you're afraid, the worse it gets. So if I had to trust, because I had to remember, like, I'm with people, because I did it under a very controlled environment where people were taking care of me and everything, because I did it with the intention of, okay, spiritual growth, what do I need to learn about myself that I need to improve upon? I had to learn to just trust everyone that was around me. Even though I did, I had to learn it even more. Like, really trust that the people I've chosen to be around me will be there for me. That they will love me even if I am in this state forever. What if I'm like this forever? Okay, well, freaking out about it's not going to, if it is the case, freaking out's not going to help. So I had to be like, look, this is it. This is it for me. And once I accepted it in a way, like, what if my body doesn't go back, it's quote unquote ruined? Accepting that, loving that too. I had to do that. Once I was able to do all those things, and that took me a bit of time, the effects actually started wearing off immediately, right after the surrender. But like doing anything else wouldn't have helped. But after that, like I still felt like the fatigue, like the oftentimes it can go very long. I feel like it can go even longer if you're not doing the work and getting the lessons you're supposed to. But because I had accepted it, all of a sudden everything turned back to normal. It was very strange.
Wow.
Powerful.
Very powerful.
And that's why I referenced like the prison of your mind.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I was like, you freed yourself.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely what it was. Like, it was like being in a mental dojo. You know how in the Matrix where they practice in the Matrix dojo? Mm-hmm. It's really a practice in the mind, right? Like, this is not real, like you can control this. That's what it felt like. LSD felt like a Matrix program that I had uploaded myself into to learn something.
And it worked.
And to me it worked, yes. But that was very difficult. I'm kind of downplaying how traumatic it was.
You are, because for the safety of our audience.
I am downplaying it. It was very traumatic. It was super traumatic. But I got a lot of goodness out of it. I don't think I ever told you everything that I had experienced that day.
I think you just gave me pieces. I was there.
You were there. You were actually there with me, and you saw actually the trauma happen in real time. But I felt like you were a very calming, like you were very appreciative of presence. Like I felt safe when you were around.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, something about me is that I don't really panic. Even when I do see other people panicking. Maybe especially if I see other people panic, I don't panic.
I'm that way too.
But I do it for their sake because I do it all the time. Ever since I was a kid, I've done it. Like people in my family have come to me just because of this. Like they know that I won't overreact.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's a superpower.
It is.
And it's very
You're
helpful.
like an anchor.
Yeah, it's very helpful for people who are going through a traumatic moment, but they look over at me and they see a peaceful face.
You're like, okay. The world is okay. No, and that you absolutely served as a reminder. Like, oh, Jay's here. Okay. Or this face, like when I couldn't remember your name in that moment, I was like, but he seems like everything's fine. Absolutely. No, absolutely. I could totally attest to that to that thought. I agree with that. And so I'm that way too. Actually, when things, especially in a time of emergency, people have commented like, you just seem so calm. Mm-hmm. Like there was a time where like there was a huge lizard that had made its way into the house. I was in the kitchen, I was cooking, and the girls were working at the table, and there was a lizard there, and they just lost their ish. They just lost their heads, and I just kind of stopped chopping, and I looked up, and I was like, "Is everything okay?" And they're screaming their heads off, and they're like, "Oh my god!" And they were telling me, and it's fine. But then afterwards, they're like, "Angela didn't even break a sweat. She was like." Not to say that I wasn't worried in the moment for them, but like I feel like adding to that doesn't help.
It doesn't, yeah.
Yeah. To just provide a calm vibe helps with establishing control.
Which seems to be the opposite of regular programming, because people seem to think that if you react along with them, that you're concerned with them and that you're on this, but you don't necessarily want to be on that same page.
You don't need to necessarily add to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the only time that really works is joy.
Yeah, exactly.
Like laughter multiplied is great. Yeah. But fear, no.
Let's keep that one inside.
Let's keep that one.
Let's just wait for a little bit. Let's see how things play out.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing happening yet. Let's just see how it plays out.
Yeah. Is anyone bleeding? No? Okay. We're okay.
We're in good shape.
We're in good shape. Things are going well. Swimmingly.
Yeah. Yeah, but more to the point of the Matrix part with the LSD, and I've also had this happen with mushrooms, is I remember looking up at the sky and seeing code. Like in that same part of the Matrix when like the bad guy, he's looking at the screen, he's like, all I see is blonde, brunette, redhead.
Yeah.
He's not seeing the code anymore. He just sees what he sees.
Right.
And then there was like an epiphany for me. I'm like, oh, I can read code. It's all code.
Right. Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
That's amazing.
It is pretty amazing. I like that.
So there you go, people. You can read code. You're good at it.
It's amazing to learn what you unlock. It's actually really good at diagnosing how you see the world.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't view it that way, and or they're not practiced with thinking about things like LSD in that manner. But I think LSD, if used in a controlled environment with people that you trust, it can show you a lot about yourself. It's very good about showing the underlying programmings on which you run, and your worldview.
Yeah.
It's really good at unveiling that. It's really good at taking away all the rationalizations that you do, because the mind is a very tricky thing. The mind can be very deceptive, and it can tell you narratives that you want to hear as opposed to the ones that you need to hear. And it's very easy at making you think that you got everything under control when you really don't.
Yep.
Jay's looking at me like he knows. He knows. I'm sure you've known people who seem very put together and very calm on the outside, but there's like this underlying hysteria. Like you could just feel like sometimes you can't even explain it, but you just know like there's something not quite right. And that's what that is one symptom of what I'm talking about, where a lot of people are really good at appearing like everything's okay, or really good at rationalizing things in their life that don't seem right, but they're like, no, but it has to be this way, or like they have no choice, or they'll give you some excuse essentially, but they're really running away from the problems as opposed to dealing with it head on. I'm sure everyone can think about one person in their life who kind of thinks or fills that bill. So my recommendation is get them on LSD. No, I'm just kidding. No.
Everybody you know.
No. Only if they're ready for that. Only if they've done a lot of work and have approached it thoughtfully and responsibly.
I do feel it's an advanced
It's
medicine.
difficult. I would not recommend that as a first time thing.
Yeah.
In terms, like on a scale of 1 to 10, in terms of advance, where would you put it on that scale? In your experience?
The LSD trip is high, isn't? It's the 10.
It's a 10 for you.
The 9.
I honestly, yeah. It's
I haven't done.
echelons.
What's the other one that you did? The Iboga.
Iboga.
That one's got to be the 10. But I haven't done that, so I can't. So I really like this LSD storytelling time. This is a good one.
I like this.
This
is fun.
I do want to do more of these. We have had experiences with many plant medicines. If you want to hear our story with any particular plant medicine, let us know in the comments.
Yes.
And we'll be happy to share.
Yeah, because everyone's experience is different, and just because we've had this experience, this in no way encapsulates every single possible experience. Everyone is different. I want to just say that.
Yeah.
And this is true for any entheogen plant medicine. It's never exactly the same for any two people. There could be recurring themes. There can be people who have very similar instances, and I've met people like that. But I just want to preface that, it can be very unique to your experience, because everyone has a unique point of view and personality type and a different background and set of experiences, and all those things will eventually come in and affect how your experience is going to turn out.
Absolutely. And a common theme is, even for people that haven't done it but want to do it, is the want to improve themselves. Like, that is a common theme amongst people who do plant medicines like this. They want to see the blind spots within themselves. I want to stop lying to myself. These are things you hear a lot in these communities, because we're tired of it. We realize that we have been lying to ourselves for so long, and it's about time to stop it so that we can free ourselves and we can live in peace.
Yeah. So in a way, plant medicines are very good at stripping away the 3D mind, the ego, however you want to talk about it, and really get to the core issue. But that you have to have that desire to see that. If you don't even want to, what's the point? It's like getting a gym membership and not wanting to work out. It's like,
it's common. People do that.
Yes. It is common, which is, it's common with plant medicines as well. With what energy are you approaching this? With what intention are you approaching this? Intention is very important, as well as the discipline. Like, you may have the intention, but if you decide to give up, like, what's the point of that too? You have to accept what all of that entails, and accept it very seriously. Like, once you've started, like, even if it's unpleasant, like, you have to will yourself to get through it, because it can be hard. As I've described it, it can be very difficult, even traumatic in a way. But this too shall pass. It only lasts for a period of time. Sometimes you need the suffering in order to experience joy. How do you know one without the other? So I like this too.
Yeah.
So definitely, as Jay said, put in the comments if you'd like to hear about another plant medicine out there. As we've mentioned, we've had extensive experience and are more than happy to share, because we know that it's one of those topics that is widely seen as taboo, and we don't believe it should be. So we're more than happy to share our experiences and just shed a little more light on something that has been very helpful for us. I lost my train of thought.
I think this is a good stopping point.
Is there any way to wrap this up? Where's a good way to wrap this up?
Thank you for joining us on our story. I forgot to name it for a second. Not history, our story.
Story.